Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 24/7. We don't really answer them 24/7. We take them 24/7. So we answer your questions 7 days a week. If you have questions, of course, you can throw them into Makana. If you don't know what Makana is or how to get into it, you can go to officehours.global/join, and you'll start getting emails. That'll give you links to Discord, to Makana, and many other things. If you don't want to do any of those things, you can go just to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. You can ask those questions 24/7, and we will feed them in. If you ask a lot of questions all at one time, we may take our time and pick and choose. So ask 2 or 3 questions at a time and see how they go into askofficehours.global. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Bill, what do we have?
Vic Hernandez starts us off this morning from Springfield, Missouri with this one. Is the Verve Pipe show available for 2D playback, and if so, where?
I just did an @everyone. I think I did an @everyone. Yeah, I did an @everyone just before the show. I saw your question, so I sorted it out. So it's in Discord. So you can see the links there. It will work in 2D on any Apple device, and it will work in 3D if you watch it on an Apple Vision Pro. So it's in what we call MVHEVC, and so that is from the concert and the interview. So we did 2 shows in one day, just about an hour apart. So the first one is the second one is an interview that we did with the band, which I thought turned out pretty well, and then also a concert. This was we believe the first live stream of a concert publicly. From a phone, an iPhone, and to an Apple Vision Pro, and possibly the first concert streamed in spatial to the Apple Vision Pro ever. So if you want to see what that looked like, again, you can jump into Discord, and we talked about Discord before. You can go to officehours.global/join, and you'll get links in the next email that will get you in there to download those and take a look. We may publish it wider, but those are there right now. Next question.
Harold Williams in Portsmouth, Virginia says, how do you feel about using LED moving head spotlights in a house of worship? Is it too risqué? I'm considering using 2 wireless DMX lights for follow spotting the speaker when they leave the pulpit to walk the aisles.
Good, Bill.
Well, like any other public, I guess I'm going to put this in quotes, performance, because I understand that faith-based worship is a different thing than pure performance. But in anything where you've got an audience and they're watching a show, you have to balance the content versus the show itself. There are some congregations, I'm sure, who love nothing more than as much performance kind of razzmatazz as possible. I've been in huge houses of worship where literally at Christmas time they bring on the camels and things like that. Those are the mega churches who see everything they do as a public performance. And then there are much more conservative faith-based communities that really want the message to be the star, and they want to keep all distractions away from it. So I think, Harold, it's a process of understanding the congregation or the assembly that you are speaking to and what's going to best serve their needs. If it's generally an older, more conservative congregation, they may not want fancy lighting and things like that. And on the flip side of that, if they're building a faith-based community, maybe the entertainment value of having better lighting and those kind of things serves those needs. So it comes down to deciding who you're speaking to, really.
Yeah, I would say that it depends on how you use the lights. If you're just simply using them as a basic following someone around and you're not doing anything zany, they're really useful. You know, having moving heads. We use moving heads in many shows. And oftentimes, if you didn't tell someone they were moving heads, they wouldn't know. It's not like they're swinging around or doing anything crazy. They're just simply following the person that's there. And I think that if you do that, I think you'd be probably fine. It just will improve the quality of the person sitting there. But it is, if it's done subtly, I don't see any reason why anyone would even notice that you were doing it. So I don't think it'd be too much of a problem. Next question.
Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas says, how many 720 24-inch screens can a Mac Mini M1 max out at?
Go ahead, Guy.
Out of the box, I'm pretty sure it's just 2. It's the HDMI, and then a Thunderbolt port would give you a second one with the little adapter. If you want to do more, so this is according to the tech specs. So, this isn't something I'm just making up. This is the Mac Mini tech specs, and it's right here under video support, one display up to 6K resolution. Now, there is this pluggable device that you can get. We've seen people like Fenwick have these DisplayPort adapters. So you download the DisplayPort driver from Simtech. I can't remember the name of the website. I'll put it in the chat. But the website will allow you then to install these drivers, and I believe you get 2 more, and that's a total of 4.
Next question.
Hamza Abu Firas it's sneaking off the page for me today. Sorry about that. In Marrakesh, Morocco says, how can I configure dynamic variables to be passed over through media tailor to the ad server? As an example, content_title from the player on the website or app to the ad server via ssai media tailor.
So this is probably a little outside of what we normally talk about here, and usually I have to even look that up every time I want to do something like that with tags. I will say that this is a place where ChatGPT does a really good job. so anyway, we has that, and I would definitely take a look at it. This is the kind of like, how do I put this in, or this kind of validator to ChatGPT is just another language. It's a large language model. So you can see here, this is the instructions. It says configure your ad server, and it gives you a sense of what that looks like. Pass media data to the player, and it gives you a sense of an example there. Configure the media tailor to the forwardable metadata. With more detail, you could probably squeeze out most of that information from ChatGPT. This is the kind of thing it happens to do very, very well. Go ahead, Jason.
No, you nailed it. I'm looking at the ChatGPT response going, wow, I could just read that, but nope, just paste your question in there and you'll be impressed.
Yeah, don't take it from us. We'll sit there and kind of trip through it. But I think that, again, this one's vertical enough that we don't have the answer for you, but ChatGPT appears to. So give it a shot and let us know how. I'd love for you, Hamza, to take the ChatGPT, put it in there, and tell us, come back and put it in as a question. Just tell us if it worked or not. We'd love for you to validate that. Next question.
Robert White in Jacksonville, Florida comes up next, and Robert wonders, what's the simplest and or cheapest way to convert a stereo signal to a mono signal for input to an audio mixer, and is there a better way? That's another QR code. Yeah. Yes. And okay. Simplest way is a Y connector. It takes 2 outputs and puts them to one input, or 2 inputs and puts them to one output. Is there a better way? Absolutely. The danger of using a simple signal combiner like a Y cable is that if there's anything squirrely about the signal coming in, particularly if it's out of phase or if elements of it are out of phase, that simple summing is going to damage your signal if it's got those problems. The other thing is that it will put a different load on the connector, so that's a whole impedance thing which you can get into. Is there a better way? Yes. Some sort of device that is actively designed to combine those 2 signals from 2 mono signals into 1 mono signal, avoiding those problems. That could be a mixer. It could be a lot of other things. But the simplest, cheapest way is the Y cable. The better way is to use some device that has the capability to take 2 signals in, mix them together properly, and send 1 signal out.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, has anyone ever used the Source-Nexus suite? And he's got a link to it there.
I don't know if anyone ever has, at least not on this panel. So, the Nexus suite here is it's from Production Expert, or I guess this is the folks. This is here, I'll pop the article up here. So here's Nexus Suite. It's a remote session platform from Source Elements, who does a lot of remote work here. So this is basically allows you to pass all of these things back and forth remotely. And so, no, we haven't seen it, but it'd be a good second hour. Like that would be a good one to bring them on and have them take a look at it. It looks like it was just new features were just released today, or announced today. So we'll keep our eye on it. Next question.
Gabriel Anastasiano Mistira in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan says, what was the person on the ladder doing at the end of the Verve Pipe show, and how did that work? Alex, was that you?
I think that was me. I think I was the person on the. I don't even know where that where there's a picture of me on the ladder. But
looks like they're adjusting lights or something for the next show,
Alex,
maybe?
your hair looks amazing.
Oh no, that's not me. Yeah, I'm sure that what they were doing is they were probably tweaking lights there. And I don't know if that was at the very end. I really don't know what. I don't know what they would have been doing at the end of it, other than potentially what they could have been doing is kind of figuring out what, doing something for the next show. So that might have been, it might have been something that I'm just pulling up an image here. So this is a picture from it, and you can see this is what I did with the ladder, which was that we put, got this up here. So this is in hidden. I don't think you can see it here, but hidden up here is what we put up here eventually was the mix pre, but this is what we attached to the ceiling, this iPhone, to get the 3D effect here. But what they were doing in there, I'm not sure. I'm guessing re-aiming a ladder for a future show, probably the show the next day or other things like that. A lot of times if you have people on the clock, they will, so if someone came in and they're on the clock and there's still time left, a lot of times they'll try to set for the next. They're here anyway, so they might as well get some of the stuff out of the way for the next one. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it live, and they got up on a ladder almost immediately after, and yeah, they were just moving lights.
My guess is
move lights.
My guess is that they're part of. There might have been something that they were upset about most of the show, like something we didn't notice, but they feel like that light wasn't in the right place. And they were like, I'm going to go fix that right now. I'm going to go deal with that. So that could have been it as well. You know, Bill?
Yeah, the other thing is I've often gone into a venue that has a regular show going on, and for my needs, I've had to move a light someplace else. And I always remember to myself, before I strike this, put the light back where it was so somebody doesn't get mad at me and yell at me.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Chris Clark in Tempe, Arizona. Does anyone have a story about teachers who upped their live streaming game during the pandemic and who are still implementing those streaming capabilities?
I think this came up last night. I think we talked about it a little bit, but it's not bad to talk about it again. I think that what one of the things we talked about last night was the meditation center where my wife works. I mean, they had never done online, and now they have a whole program for that. And I don't think that that's going away anytime soon. I think that one of the things that to also look at is almost every school now, if they have a snow day or they have some kind of other thing, they revert to online school very quickly, as opposed to what they used to do is have snow days. Now school days are just done at home. And that is a dramatic change from what it was pre-COVID. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'll also say that once you learn to do something at a higher level than you were able to do it before, it's really hard to slip back to doing it the old way. Now, I know that's not always the case, but I think if you put in the time during the middle of that difficult time to figure out how to stream in a better way, you carry those lessons with you through your life, and you're always looking at things a little bit differently. And I know that in all the media work I've done, every time I learn a skill, even if it's something as simple as how to wrap a cable correctly, I don't just do it and then forget about it and go back. From that point forward, even my smaller cables and things like that, I tend to wrap over and under, not because it needs to be done that way, but just because I've learned a skill and I want to keep it in my life. It turned out to be valuable. Yeah,
it's interesting. We talked about this a little bit last night as well, but I think that one of the things that when we talk to a lot of corporate clients is they may go back to physical events, but the online component is much more pronounced than it was before COVID. So it's not necessarily that they've all gone that direction all 100%. Now, there are some corporate folks like Apple who basically got rid of their live stage performances. So they started doing videos early on for both WWDC as well as their keynotes, and you'll see the keynote next week. I doubt the keynote next week will have anybody on stage. There'll be a movie that they play out, and I think that it's because Apple found that they could make it a lot more efficient, they could make it a lot better, they could make it a lot tighter, they could put a lot less pressure on their executives. There's a lot less rehearsal for the executives. There's all kinds of advantages to doing that. And so I think that you're going to see more and more of those systematic changes. A lot of times, these things take, it lurched forward because it was forced to, and then it pulled back because people were like, "Hey, we want to go back to this again." But I think now what you're seeing is a kind of march forward. I do think we're going to see in the world of education, I think you're going to see it especially affect states with vouchers or educational savings accounts, because a physical school with a voucher program doesn't actually have enough money per student to be successful if you bring them physically in. If you do it online, it absolutely has enough. So I think that what you're going to see is online schools that have already come out in a variety of different ways. Online schools are going to start cropping up more and more across the states that have ESAs as well as voucher systems because they're more sustainable in that area. And I think that there's a lot of people talking about it and working on it right now. So I think that that's where you might see a greater impact because they become very competitive when they move to an online platform. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, during the pandemic, it was tough for us to sell these things called the one-button studio because we couldn't install them. But once the tail end of it, we were able to travel again. We got a few testimonials of people that were starting to use these, mostly for records, actually, even though you could do Zoom. So basically, it's a system where there's a teleprompter here, there's two monitors, so you join Zoom, then you can have, in this example, you see a high school football game, and they're able to do telestration. This is a Wacom tablet, but this is an all-in-one system, and on the website, you're able to actually read through a bunch of case studies. There's a couple hundred people that have those installed now. So they're really cool. But what we're seeing them used for is a mix of not just live, but they're recording their sessions, and then the students can watch them. And then when they meet again, they're able to talk amongst themselves. But the teachers are actually using it to create their curriculum. And what we're seeing is that they use it quarter after quarter after quarter. So they do the lesson once, and then that same lesson, we're seeing some of the dates, and it's like, that was 2 years ago that you created that curriculum. So it's pretty cool to see the teachers able to record it once and use it over and over again, because history is still history. Nothing changed since 1800s.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really fascinating, in the sense that I really strongly believe that you should not be lecturing very often, if at all. Teachers should never really lecture. I ran into this by accident. I think I've talked about it in the past, where I had to teach two classes at the same time. There was a scheduling issue in a school in Philadelphia where I was doing a summer camp, and so I had to do a beginning and an advanced class at the same time. And so what I did is I recorded the videos on how to do each one of those for each side, and then had the students, I'd be jumping back and forth answering questions, and they actually learned faster than they did the year before where I was lecturing. And that's when my eyes kind of popped open to, I should have been recording these all the time and really just delivering them, because the advantage of a video is that the slower students can repeat, and the faster students can play it twice the speed, and so now it's a more of it definitely expands and contracts with the student, as opposed to some students falling behind and asking questions. And then what it leaves the teacher open to do is answer questions, walk around, see how people are doing, interact with everybody. And that's a much different experience. And I think it's much more, I don't know. It was much more, I felt like doing that, it was a much better use of my time, is to do this once and let the students do it. And they could find a lot of those things. And I think you're going to see, more and more of that. I think people are starting to realize that the lectures aren't very effective. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, and another company, Epiphan, really started to sell a lot of these, what they call lecture management systems, lecture capture systems. And Jonas was in school at the time, and he was showing me how his teacher for his networking class was utilizing a lecture capture system that when you did a search for a phrase like TCP/IP, it would go through and show you every date of every video. So it's not just the system. It's not just teachers doing one-offs. It's them putting their entire curriculum into this system, and it being able to close caption and add subtitles and things like that, so that you could scan it later, or you can just search for a phrase throughout the entire quarter. So if you even missed a class, you can go back and still get that same information at a later date or at your leisure and watch it 2x, 3x, whatever you want.
Yeah, and if you look at transcription so as well as LLMs, it's one thing to ask ChatGPT something, but you could be taking all the lectures that you've done over the last 10 years, put them into an LLM, and then people are querying your lecture, not a lecture, but your lectures, for information. And whether that's more accurate than ChatGPT would remain to be seen. But as a teacher, you would be able to you or your department or your school would be the generation of all of that. But the key is capturing it either of those lectures in class or capturing them separately. And I'm a big fan of separate. And I think that other things that I've done in the past that I think we'll see more in education is, one of office hours. We were talking about this a little bit last night. I can't remember whether it was before the show or during the show, but office hours grew out of a thing that was called Ask Alex that I did when I was testing streaming on YouTube 10 years ago or 12 years ago, where people could just put in questions inside of, I don't remember what it was. And I would just, I think they were just comments in YouTube or whatever. And then I would just answer questions that were there. But before that, probably 2004, 2005, there was an Ask Alex. And it was people would text in questions or email questions in, and I would simply record the audio answers and put them out as a little podcast for everyone in Pixel Corps. So the Pixel Corps had 2,000 members, and so members could just push all those questions in, and I would just sit down and answer all those. I would sit down and answer 10 questions or 20 questions in a given session, and then put them out as an audio podcast just for the members to get those. And I think that teachers being able to take the questions, the things that fall through, and rather than answering them once, rather than answering to one student, record the video for the student, post them, and let them, that way that is put into the record, so to speak, which is kind of, again, how, for instance, Khan Academy kind of started that way. Sal Khan was teaching his nephew math and was doing little videos about how to do it, and it started to become pretty useful, and it kind of grew from there. And so I think that process, I think teachers need to get better at that. And I think that sometimes teachers think there's a lot of production, but a lot of the best videos I've done on a specific subject were often done in Keynote. Just do Keynote. You can narrate it. You can push it. You can narrate it while you're going through the slides. Everything animates and moves around, and you just hit. There's a movie. You hit export, and there's the movie. And you can do it per slide, or you can do it however you'd like to do those things there. So I think that makes a lot more sense. I mean, I think that there's, again, I know we're kind of gone off the rails here a little bit, but I do think that education is going to change. It's going to change whether people are ready for it or not in the next 5 years more than it has in 100. Like it is, like between video and large language models and online school and everything else, we're about to see a just amazing disruption in what we've had for the last 100 years, which I think is great. Next question.
Dale Brooks in Las Vegas, Nevada is up next, and Dale wonders, do any of the panelists know if the Glean app for alternative note-taking is worth trying out?
I looked at it based on this question, and I just couldn't see myself ever using it. I can see that how someone might use it. If you're really kind of a note-taker kind of person and you like everything to be organized and you like to put all those things together, it looks like it's there, but you probably have a bunch of systems already that you would use that for. So I couldn't quite get my head around when I would use that specifically. If I was looking for a shortcut, again, I'd probably look at large language models more before I necessarily looked at this. I couldn't see myself using it. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next, and his question is, should genAI companies have to watermark their output? There's a link there.
I don't know if they have to. I mean, I think California would like to. California is a state of laws. We just keep making laws, whether we need them or not. So they're coming up with a new law that says that you have to. They want to force them to watermark them. I don't know how the watermarking will work or if it'll work. Watermarking in general hasn't worked very well in the past, so it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. I think that if California did it by themselves, people would get better at using VPNs. It seems like a silly thing to do. Next question.
Ryan Thompson in Houston, Texas, up next. Speaking of stabilization and understanding that it is best done in shooting, what's the best software to stabilize a shaky video?
There's a lot of the software now, whether it's Final Cut or Resolve or Premiere, they all have tools inside of them. I don't know if any external tool is much better for stabilizing those. I think that it's all gotten pretty good at doing what they're doing. The problem you get into when you stabilize it, it's one thing to stabilize it, it's another thing to fix the motion blur. So what happens is the camera's moving back and forth, and you can stabilize it so the camera doesn't look like it's moving back and forth anymore, but you still have these motion blur movements that are kind of moving around that. And so that's the thing that usually we find to be more complicated. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
100% agree with that. And the thing is, trying to understand stabilization, after you do it for a while, you start seeing the kind of shots that are going to be successful when stabilization is applied to them, and the kind of shots that are not. I can't tell you the number of times that I've seen something that's moderately shaky and it's going to be fine, and then somebody bumps the camera or something and there's a wild, crazy thing. And I have learned that if you cut out that wild, crazy movement, the stabilization algorithm has a much easier time doing a good job on everything else. It is those anomalies that aren't stabilizable that can sometimes affect your whole stabilization run and cause it to fail when it otherwise might not. So it's just not an automatic tool where you think to yourself, I'll just apply it to everything and see if it works, because you'll get a lot of false positives or false, why didn't this work? Why did the stabilization not work? And then if you understand what's going on in the background, you'll come down to that one. Oh, that's the problem. It's that one little half a second that if I just get rid of that, then it'll work just fine. Those are kind of the subtleties of stabilization.
Next question.
David Brady in New York City, looking for consumer-grade mobile hotspot, mostly for the web, but occasionally streaming. Stumbled across Solis Lite 4G, which touts global connectivity through an eSIM. Any thoughts? And he's got a link there to Solis Wi-Fi.
Good guy.
I'd probably still go with the traditional provider. The Netgear Nighthawk series, the cool thing about these ones is that they actually have Ethernet on them, so you can hardwire these things in, which is nice if your device, like an ATEM or something, has Ethernet jack, then you could plug it directly in. But the Solis looks interesting. I was going through some of the differences here. There is a $159 version versus a $399 version, and it looks like the more expensive one will do 5G, and it's got power bank, Wi-Fi 6. So it looks interesting, especially if the carrier that you're using, let's say it's T-Mobile or something like that, it doesn't have a good connection in your area that you frequent to be able to use this, because it says carrier activation is automated. So I'm curious as to who's actually doing the providing for this service.
Yeah, only use international if you absolutely need it. It's just a really hard. Global usually limits you. Now, if it's global connectivity just because of the eSIM and you can just swap SIMs out, it's fine. But usually moving SIMs around is hard, globally. And so I think that if I'd really focus on, again, exactly what Guy said there. Next question.
Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's jumping on me still. Agreeable gray versus Winchester gray, which is more flexible in different zoom locations for backgrounds and or floors?
I think these are Sherman-Williams terms for actual grays. The agreeable gray is much lighter than Winchester gray, so it's warmer and lighter. Winchester is cooler and darker. Winchester wins. So if you're going to put something behind you, go for the cooler and darker. Next question.
Karen Addis in Melbourne, Australia. First, thank you for what you do. I have learned so much from all of you. I have the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. When I plug in my iPhone 12 using the Apple HDMI adapter, the audio meters in multi-view show there's no audio. Am I doing something wrong?
I go, Jason.
So my first thought is we need to know what you're doing with this HDMI output. Are you doing playback? Are you trying to pass camera video feed? That's probably the first thing. But just a quick check Test the HDMI adapter with another device if you have one. Make sure that the phone's audio output is actually up because that can mess with it. Test it through HDMI, meaning like plug it into a monitor or a TV and see if you're getting audio there. If you're not, then it doesn't really matter. Check the ATEM ISO settings because I'm not sure if it does retiming for video frame rate. Check your HDMI cable and then update your ATEM. See if that does it.
A good guy.
Yeah, in addition to everything that Jason said, if it still all doesn't work, then just look again at one of these little $29 audio extractors. So you plug HDMI in one way and then kick it back out the other way, but you also get a de-embedding here of the audio in analog. So you can then take that audio back out from that aux out and then plug it directly into, you would need to buy a 3.5 to 3.5 millimeter adapter. And this is like $29, but if it solves it for $29, I had the same problem with my church. So that's why I know about this, because I said, hey, get me one of these things because we're not able to get audio into that projector because it had no input. So I had to extract it.
And also let us know what camera you're using. If you're using the Blackmagic camera, note that you have to turn the monitor on, and then you'll have to make that and define what it's outputting. So it'll default to the phone itself if you turn monitor on, but it's actually in the interface. You have to have that. You have to be able to open up settings, go to audio. Monitor will be off by default because it assumes you don't want to push the audio back out of the phone speakers. But you should be able to select HDMI, and that might be, if you didn't do that and you're using the Blackmagic camera, that's where that would come in. And I would recommend the Blackmagic camera if you're trying to do this, or also take a look at the Shoot app from Michael Forrest. What I would recommend getting cameras into your Blackmagic switcher is to use. My recommendation is to use an old Apple TV. So take one of your old, if you have an older Apple TV, take that and plug it in to your switcher. It gives you a wireless connection. It's a lot less finicky than the HDMI, and it should carry audio as well. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts. What's the best way to light two people sitting side by side looking into the same camera? A large softbox, a light panel, or something else? The light will be about 6 feet away.
Go.
So there's two ways to think about this. Do you want to be simple or do you want to be really right? The simple way is to use a 3-point lighting for the whole scene. And that means you're going to have some sort of main key light, maybe off to a little bit to one side, a fill light that's going to be lighting the people from the non-key side to bring up the shadow side of their face, and a backlight or rim light, which is coming behind them to separate them from the background. Now, that's in general. The better way to do it is to think of them still as two separate people and light them for what they're doing. And I'll toss up, this is not what you're talking about. You're talking about them sitting side by side, but a scene like this will give you an idea of how really good two-person lighting is done. And you're going to notice that there's a key light on each of these two people, but the key lights are coming from different angles. On the gentleman on the left, and if we zoom into him, you'll see that his face is brighter than the back of his head, but you can still see his ear on the back of his head. That is the result of both the key and fill, and then the rim light is hitting him. All of those lights are coming from essentially stage left. If we go over to the other young lady who's in the shot, you will see that it's exactly the opposite. Her face is lit, keyed from stage right, and she's still got that fill and the rim light separating her out. All of that put together kind of makes an attractive looking scene for each person. And that's what I think about doing every time I think about lighting two people in a scene. I break them down as individuals. You have them side by side so you can cheat a little bit, but I'd still use two separate keys, two separate fills, and a rim light probably for both of them.
Here's an example that we used to do a lot of this kind of interview for one of our clients. And so here's an example of what our setup would look like. It might be a little more than what you want, but we had a lot of these divas here. Let me get a better color. A lot of these divas here that we used, and usually we have 4 to 6 of them that we would kind of put in a variety of ways. Use these longer ones for the green screen. I'm not saying you need green screen, but that's what we did there. But what you can see is we kind of started to get these up as high as we could over top of those. Of course, we have room for 2 mics that are coming in here. This is our hair light that's coming down here on both of them. Here's a teleprompter, and what we did there is that's an Interatron teleprompter, so it just gives them, when they're looking at the interview, they're looking directly into that teleprompter there. These blankets here are to break up a little bit of the sound, to try to reduce any kind of reflections. There were probably some out of frame here too that we were hanging there to try to pull that down. But this kit didn't actually take that long to set up. Usually it would take us an hour to get that all kind of into place. And so, but then we would do, I don't know, probably 10 hours a month of that, sometimes 10 hours a week of that kind of shooting. And it seemed to work pretty well. We like to generalize the lighting for these kinds of interviews because we don't know what it's going to go in front of. So we tend not to get cinematic, because we're going to put them in front of a variety of different things in these interviews, in this case, green screen. And because of that, now you may change your mind if you're going to put them into a scene, but if you're going to put them over something or you don't know what the context is, we went more with kind of broadcast, general, make everybody look good. So big, soft sources as close as we can get to the camera, that are high up so that you can define their chin. Those are the things that we usually think about. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is up next. Discuss Mikevisuals Tracking POV Kit with 7 360-degree rotating hinges combined with 3 ARRI Rosettes and 4 ball heads of the magic arms. And he's got a link there to the layout.
Seems like a lot of camera. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it looks like a train wreck to me. I started to watch this video. Basically, it's this arm that you put on both sides on the subject device and on your camera, and then you would rotoscope this arm back out, and it gives you some different creative looking shots. So if you wanted like this drone shot where you wanted to take away later on in post this arm back out of the scene. So it's goofy to me. I can't see using this. Like, I mean. It's interesting, but I don't think that you would ever see a professional using something like this. There's other ways of doing it, but it's interesting. It's just a couple pieces of metal that swing around, though, to allow you to stabilize an object in front of the camera. But it's basically tethering the two together. So it's an interesting device, but I can't see a use, and especially if the object has to be a certain size because you're swinging it around. Based on those hinges, so it can't be too heavy because it'll just break the hinge or bend it. So it has a specialized purpose, and if you're doing a lot of product photography for something that size, then maybe it's a creative shot that for the money I can't imagine even paying $100 for that thing. It seems very, very cheap.
I'm just fascinated by it. I'm just kind of like looking at it. At first, I didn't think it would be useful. I could see places where we might do it, but yeah, you're right. There's a lot of there'd be a lot of rotoscoping that would be required to make this work. But a lot of that stuff is relatively simple these days, and you're doing it off of an object. But yeah, it's interesting. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Eduardo Augustine in Panama City. Started with using the Atomos Ninja V to send video to the ATEM Mini Extreme. Using a battery pack, the Ninja V doesn't hold more than 15 minutes. Is there a power solution, or could batteries be too dead? Wouldn't they last at least 1 hour?
Go, Jason.
I can't speak to how long they'll last, but my feeling here is yes, get a dummy battery and a good small rig has a 99 milliamp hour, and that should run it for quite some time.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see what I don't have this monitor, so I'm not clear what what type of battery is it. Is it a 970 style battery? Let's see here. Just trying to figure out what the yeah, it's an NP. Yeah, this is these are the MPF batteries. This is kind of a Sony style battery. They come in a lot of different sizes. So the one that's probably lasting 15 minutes probably is the one that came with the monitor, and it's probably half an inch deep. You can get them where they're like 3 inches deep and it'll last a lot longer. So the one that I think your problem is that you're using the one that came with it, which is probably designed to be sleek and kind of a backup and everything else. but you can get much thicker ones. And as Jason said, that Small Rig makes one that fits into that style that has a digital output and a USB-C and all kinds of other stuff that's there as well. I might have one. Oh, I have the charger for one right here because we use them in our. I use them in my Scorpio for my sound devices recorder. So they, but they're very common to use. These are the Sony NP-F batteries, NP-F batteries. But again, they come in a wide range of thicknesses, and you probably just have the thin one. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, and if you got the original NiCads, they also do wear out over the course of time. They will not take a full charge, and your use and charging behavior will affect the life of the battery. If you commonly run them down to zero and charge them fully, sometimes that helps. I know a lot of people who will throw them in for a little bit and then recharge them and throw them in for a little bit, and they have all sorts of memory effects. They're all mostly moving to lithium hydroxide or other kind of battery chemistry. I may have that wrong, but mostly batteries are getting lighter. They hold more power, but whatever type of battery chemistry it is, do some research and understand the charging and depletion cycle that battery lasts the longest with. Memory effect in battery is real, and I've had batteries that were less than a year old that stopped being chargeable to high levels.
Yeah, and quick reminder that, of course, you can ask questions anytime during the hour or anytime during the day at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. Let's go ahead and jump into the next question.
Michael in Sierra Madre, California says, are there any AI tools that can do chroma keying, and is it worth it?
Not really. I mean, there are some new AI matting tools that Resolve has as far as extraction tools, and I think all of the platforms have some version of that. But the reality is that shooting good chroma key is what makes it work. Like shooting good quality, high quality green screens is what makes it key well. And that's really the basis of what you want to look at, as opposed to trying to find a better tool. The reason most keying, even in film, doesn't look that great is because the actual key, chroma key shots were not very good. So that ends up with kind of more smooth lines and so on and so forth. So, but I would focus more on the physical of acquisition, like everything else. You may find that it's considerably better if you just focus on that. But I don't know of any tools that are doing thing that's that much better than a standard linear key done well. Next question.
Nathan Cordiaca in Hamilton, Ontario says, anyone aware of an AI generator to plug in a bunch of event sponsor logos and spit out a logo loop that's more unique than the typical PowerPoint logo loop during the attendee walk-in?
Here's the secret to this, because I've done a fair number of these, and I should probably do a video lesson on this. So the best way to do logos, in my opinion, the best easy way, not the best way. There's great ways to do them. You can take them into something like I used to use a thing called Invigorator by Zach's Works, Zach's DAO. But I would take an EPS and extrude it out, and then let us animate it. You can take that. You can do that in something like Cinema 4D, but those take a little bit to learn. The easiest way to do this is to take you need EPS files, so it can't be they need to be EPS or SVG, and then you open up something like Fontographer. So Fontographer it allows you to build fonts, and this is because Apple Motion can only see fonts; they can't see the EPS files. Convert all your logos, and I know some people who do this. That you convert all your logos to a font, so that A is this logo and B is that logo. And you get them all worked out there. Then you bring them into something like Motion. You hit A, and it pops up as Motion should just import them, but they don't. And so you hit A, and it pops up. And I think that the reason that Motion doesn't do this in the same way that Keynote doesn't necessarily take every SVG in as a shape is that they don't want to parse it. They don't want to figure out how to parse every version of an EPS, and so it forces the user to figure it out. And I had to figure out how to get lots of SVGs into Keynote, and that was one of the challenges. But you get that in there, and now once you're in Motion, the ability to extrude something and make it look beautiful really fast is almost instant. It's a $50 application, and you can do great animations. And what's cool is you can kind of set up a behavior for the rotation, and then you just swap each model. You literally just attach them all to the effector or to the null, and then just turn each one on and off and hit render, and you'll just render out all these pieces that you can use. You can even put them on little particle systems so they're all flying around. Whatever you want to do there. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I see the two words sponsor logos in a work order for anything, and I get twitchy only because I used to deal with a lot of them through my corporate work. And most people on the corporate side are fine with whatever you want to do because this is a limited use and it doesn't have a big audience. Every once in a while, you're going to get the corporate logo police from that corporation who have a giant book of rules about how their logo can and cannot be used in public-facing stuff, and they will drive you nuts. So just understand, try your best, do your best. I tend to be conservative with logos, with messing with them, just because of that old experience and having had too many long conversations with some junior lawyer at a big corporation who says, you cannot use our logo that way. It's against the brand things. Here, let me send you a 700-page book about how to use it. And most of the time, this is such a small thing. Please don't mess with my life because of this. But just understand, logos are funny that way. Take a deep breath and relax, and you'll get through it.
And one of the first things to do is to ask for the, there's usually some kind of brand guide, and asking for the brand guide is a good place to start. If they don't give you a brand guide or they don't know where it is, just create something and send it to them, and then they'll find it. so as Bill said, somebody will see it. They'll grab their pearls and say, where is that brand guide? Get them the brand guide. Get them the brand guide stat. Go ahead, Jason.
Yes, where's that lookbook that we don't have but are about to make? Everything that Bill and Alex said was perfect. I'm going to give you a low-cost alternative, and yes, please do get the brands vectorized. But poster booking is insanely easy, insanely cheap. You can run it on an Apple TV, a Raspberry Pi, an Amazon Fire TV stick will run this. And it can be updated in real time. It's used by businesses. And it is truly just fantastic, easy ways to do signage. It can be animated, and your first 10 screens are free, and then after that it is very inexpensive. So that's posterbooking.com.
Next question.
Punsak Georgi in Dharamshala, India comes up next. Hi, panelist. Is live streaming an art? Thanks.
I'd like to quote, I'm not going to try to do it but from Man on Fire, you can be an artist at anything. Cooking or whatever. It's just how much effort you put into it, and how good you are at it. So I would say that anything is an art if you take it to that level. If you're focused on it, I think that live streaming is definitely. But again, I think that a plumber can be an artist, at plumbing. So I think that you definitely, when at the beginning, and we talked a little bit about this, I think it was last night. But there are different levels of live streaming. And the first level is just trying to figure out how to do it and asking lots of questions. And then you get into being able to you're just trying to survive. Then you're just trying to do a good job. Then you're just trying to do something excellent, do something that's out of the box. And then you start talking about how people feel. And we just know that, I know when I'm talking to someone that they've done lots of these and they're paying attention to the right things when we start talking about how the audience feels in the room, how the audience feels watching the show, how do the hosts feel, how do people feel about what you're doing. And when you start talking about that, now you're because the other stuff's out of the way. You figured out how to do those things. Those aren't, like, getting it done has stopped being the thing, and the creative experience becomes a thing. And I think that at that point, you're starting to become an artist at what you do. Next question.
Next one comes from Robin Cutshaw in Atlanta, Georgia. And Robert asks, I'd like to take the HDMI output from a device, an Apple TV in this case, at one location and watch it at another. Is NDI the best solution for this? And what are the best devices to use on each side?
Good guy.
Yeah, I'm using this little box called a Zowie box. It's about $169. So you can see my Apple TV. This is how I do it at my house. So I have a Apple TV plugged into it, and I can control it and whatnot. But the interesting thing is that once you have that Zowie box hooked up, you can either SRT to another location if you just wanted to shoot the video in there. The other way is using NDI bridge. So you would then have NDI bridge running where you're a joiner. So you can either, depending on if you have a PC, so the NDI bridge requires it. If you're a Mac person, then just use SRT and just receive it on the other side. There is going to be a noticeable delay with the SRT. You'll see that in my setup here, that I actually created a button here that's SRT. You could even change these into either a encoder or a decoder, depending on how you set them up. So this is also lightweight. It's a NDI HX, not full NDI. So that's the other cool thing. And here's where you could change the working mode from an encoder to a decoder. So if you got two of these, you could see that on Amazon, they're $169. They're in stock. You could have one tomorrow. They're very inexpensive for what they do. Again, it's an encoder or a decoder, depending on how you set it up here inside of the box. And then to get that little button like I had at the top here, you would create a preset, and then when you press that SRT button, you can't have SRT and NDI going at the same time. It's giving me a little warning. But if I didn't have NDI enabled, I could just beam SRT to anywhere in the world with the press of this one button. So even for a volunteer or something, this can work.
Go, Jason.
Boy, I think I might like Guy's answer better. But if you don't need to route it, if it needs to be just super simple, I think the term you're looking for here is Balin. Monoprice has many of these. This is product 21609 at monoprice.com. It basically just uses HDMI HD Paste T, which is HDMI to Ethernet ostensibly, and will pass things like remote control and will maintain DHCP. So that's all there is to it.
Yeah, and let us know when you say location, if it's location in the same building or the same city or the same country. That's one thing I'm not totally clear of. So let us know. Next question.
Pedro G. Gonzalez in Oklahoma City is up next, needing to start storing production gear off-site and wondering about downsides. Which route would you go? Friend's garage, public storage, climate-controlled office rental, and so forth.
Yeah, we've used a lot of public storage for this, or some, not the brand, but U-Haul or public storage or other things, and we found that to be fairly useful in those areas. Climate control is great, so so I think that's the one you want to think about. Sorry. So indoor climate control, here are the things that you want to think about when you do that. What's your access control? So can you get in 24/7? How long can you get in there? Is there a loading dock, or are you going to try to pull things off the street? Things, when you think about the size of your space, think about whether you need a build area and also whether you need a storage area. Typically, what we've done in the past is we want them to be a little bigger than what you'd expect, because we want to be able to have one or two tables that we can open in the center with racks going down the side where we put all of our gear. So those are things that you want to kind of consider. Does it have power, or are you going to try to just use a UPS when you bring it in and charge it and plug things in if you need to test anything? So it depends on how much you need from those things. But do they have carts? Or are you going to bring your own carts? Do they have, is it 24/7 security? So is there someone managing access at any given time? So these are all things you want to kind of keep in mind when you're starting to look for storage. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, the one thing that I would really be shy about is the friend's garage idea that you tossed out, because, hopefully you keep your friends your entire life, but you never know if you might have a falling out and then it becomes sticky. Plus, there's that access thing. If you, oh my gosh, I got to go check at 3 o'clock in the morning because I don't know if the batteries are in good enough shape for this next shoot. And then suddenly you're in somebody's backyard or their garage shuffling around it. I like the fact that public storage, particularly the ones that have hallways inside, you go in there, you know who's around you, you're opening up the door to your stored, probably very expensive equipment, and there's nobody watching over your shoulder. That's going to make you less of a target. Plus, they usually have really good security and the rest of that. So I went that direction. The only thing I'd be wary of, though, is that once you start paying that monthly bill on a storage unit, you go, oh, it's all safe, and you don't go back for 3 months. And then if something happens and you get put in the hospital, next thing you know, you've got a year and a half of charges for that, and you've never gone to it. So it's always a balance whenever you get some facility like that. But that's what I did, public storage, and it worked fine.
Next question.
John Fisher, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. What's the best way to remove the inconsistent sounds of the camera operator breathing on impromptu videos shot with a mobile phone?
Oh, those are hard. Yeah, I mean, it is. I don't know what the there are a variety of tools that I think RX. So, I would say RX, and I think you're going to have to find the breathing, and you're going to have to select it in RX to pull it out. I believe that what Adobe's audio tool that I haven't used in a decade. That the number one reason Audition, the number one reason I used it long ago was specifically for this tool, because what you could see is you could look at the spectrogram and you could see the breaths and you could circle them and it would just get rid of them. You could just go through and circle the thing you want to get rid of and it would just blend it in. But I don't know how to fix that. Yeah, go Bill.
The systems now that do noise reduction often have a learning piece in them. I mean, that's the old traditional way is you teach it what a breath sounds like and you ask it to go through and automated remove them. It can work and it's getting better, automated reduction of things like that. The Cedar system here does my breaths in between things and it does a pretty good job. But I would say the biggest downside and the reason you're running into this is almost all cases shooting with your phone, you do not have a feedback loop where you can hear the actual sound of what you're recording. It's one of the reasons I have things like those little Saramonic units that once attached through Lightning to my phone or now USB-C will allow you to put a monitor in and listen closely. If you're not listening to your audio as you record it, you're always at risk of having these kinds of sounds that are annoying, knowing that you fit in post because you can't hear them in the field. So unless it's absolutely impossible or just not going to use the soundtrack off of what my phone's recording, I want something where I can monitor the sounds. I'm going to turn it up with headphones I trust, and I'm going to listen. And as soon as I hear over and over again, I'm going to do something different with the microphone placement or the microphone or something to remove that as being a problem.
Next question.
Gordon Lake in Los Angeles comes up next, and Gordon says, what's a good workflow when doing an ongoing non-live show with up to 4 guests that will be uploaded to YouTube?
I think that the question is so when you say that, I think the question that we would have is this is this 4 guests that are coming in over Zoom or 4 guests that are coming in or that you're recording live? So let us know what that looks like, because that would be 2 very different answers. For 4 guests, that the best way to do it for 4 guests that would be uploaded to YouTube, if they're remote, would probably be Riverside. And I would say Zoom in a heartbeat if Zoom had double end recording. Just saying, if Zoom is watching. But without that, I think that I would use Riverside because of the double end recording. We've had some trouble with Squadcast, so I probably wouldn't necessarily use that. And then if it was in person, then it just depends on how you lay that out and how you're shooting it. So those would be the things I'd suggest. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Pedro G. Gonzalez in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Anyone use the Ultimate Support TS110BL Extra Tall Lift-Assisted Speaker Stand? Looks good for larger speakers. And what portable speaker stands do you use?
Usually, I haven't seen this one, so I'm not sure exactly what that would look like. But what I would say is that I would typically say that I prefer ones that are integrated into the speakers. So in the past, what I've done when I used to be a DJ a lifetime ago, is you had these big speakers and they have a large speaker hole in the bottom of them, and you set them down onto them for larger speakers. Now, if you're doing that's for DJing. If you're doing actual, you're trying to put them on something. I just got some adjustable ones, but they're not for very large speakers. Going high with large speakers that aren't designed to go high is risky. Yeah, go ahead, Bill, pretty quick.
Yeah, the one I used to use were on stage stands, and exactly as Alex described, rather than the typical quarter 23, 8/16, or whatever else kind of mounts at the top of the stand, they have a big, almost 1.25 inch, I think, pole that goes into specific fittings on the bottom of those speakers. And so I've used a lot of those. They're very stable, and there's a lot of adapters for those, though, if you want to put them on something bigger. Those are all possibilities for you.
Patrick Smith will be joining us here in just a couple of seconds, or about a minute. Looking ahead, mix preparation. So, how do you get ready for a mix? We'll be talking about that tomorrow. Thursday, NLE plugins and extensions. So, what do we add to our Final Cut, to Resolve, to Premiere, to make it a little bit better? And Friday, home studio evolution from beginner to broadcast. So really talking about the evolution of where you may go in your studio. And we'll be talking about the 7 stages of home studio evolution from beginning to broadcast. So Junaid Ahmed is the author of that 7 stages of home studio evolution. And so they'll be here on Friday to talk about that. And of course, Saturday is Q&A, and Sunday, of course, is introspection, where we kind of just discuss what all things of office hours. So stay tuned for that.